If after eating you feel bloated, tired, or even have brain fog and you have been diagnosed with lactose, sorbitol, or fructose intolerance, you may have SIBO. I'll explain what it is. I'm Monica, I'm a biologist, and I share information on social media about microbiota and health. You can find me on them as Somos Microbiota. In this video, I want to talk to you about SIBO, which affects many more people than we think and is not well known. So, what is SIBO? Well, the initials in Spanish stand for small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. Although we always talk about bacterial overgrowth, there will not only be bacteria, but also archaea or fungi. Therefore, from now on, I will refer to all of them as microorganisms. Now, what does SIBO exactly mean and why is it important for us to understand how it arises? Well, let's go step by step. To understand why an overgrowth in the small intestine can harm us, we must understand that the arrangement of our bacteria in the intestine is not random, but rather strategically organized. Food is first taken to the small intestine and then to the large intestine. In the small intestine, most of these nutrients are absorbed and will become part of our energy source. Then, the remnants will pass to the large intestine, where what remains will be absorbed, and, finally, what has not yet been digested will be left for the bacteria and other microorganisms, who will use it to transform it, for example, into short-chain fatty acids, which will be a source of energy for the cells of the intestine. Thus, everything is distributed in such a way that we first take advantage of all the nutrients, and finally, what we have not used will be utilized by the bacteria and microorganisms for our benefit. It is a symbiosis and a perfect balance. But what happens when these bacteria and microorganisms move up to the small intestine? Well, they will compete with us for these foods, causing us to poorly absorb the nutrients, and the fermentation they produce will lead to discomfort and bloating. The general symptoms of SIBO are pain, abdominal distension, heavy digestion, burning in the stomach, diarrhea, and intolerances such as to sorbitol, fructose, or lactose. We know that the intestine and microbiota are connected to the rest of the body and emotions, so the symptoms will not be limited to just these. They also extend to, for example, skin problems, menstrual pain, low vagal tone, anxiety, or depression. To understand how SIBO arises, we must recognize that SIBO itself is not an infectious disease that appears and disappears without reason. It is a type of dysbiosis, and a consequence of some mechanisms failing to maintain our state of health. The causes of SIBO are numerous and are rarely due to just one specific cause, rather, they are the sum of many. One of them, for example, is if the ileocecal valve fails, which is the gate that separates the large intestine from the small intestine. If it fails, it is likely that the bacteria can pass from the large intestine, where they should be, and move up to the small intestine. In the small intestine, as we have seen, they will have more nutrients. The food arrives sooner, and thus they will grow more quickly and uncontrollably. This valve fails, for example, in cases of hypochlorhydria, which is when the stomach's acid barrier decreases. Also in diets with excess carbohydrates or bile problems. And SIBO itself also causes the valve to fail. As we will see, many of these problems feed back into each other. SIBO can also occur if there is an alteration in the intestinal barrier mucosa. This produces antimicrobial peptides that limit the excessive growth of some microorganisms. If this fails, they can grow, as we have said, uncontrollably. SIBO can also occur due to parasites, diseases like Parkinson's, immune disorders, chronic stress, low vagal tone, or even age is also a factor. As I was saying, the causes are almost infinite. But, before we overwhelm ourselves with all these possible causes, it is important to understand that with a healthy lifestyle, taking care of the 4 pillars of our microbiota, which are nutrition, rest, emotional management, especially stress, and physical exercise, we can maintain a healthy and balanced state of life. Depending on the type of microorganism that grows, we are facing different types of SIBO. There is hydrogen SIBO, which is characterized by having many diarrhea episodes. There is also methane SIBO, also called IMO, produced by methane-producing archaea, and it is characterized by constipation. We have hydrogen sulfide SIBO, which is an excess of sulfate-reducing bacteria. It is characterized by episodes of both diarrhea and constipation. Then we have fungal SIBO, also called SIFO, which is due to the growth of fungi. It would be characterized more or less by great fatigue after meals. The most common test to diagnose a SIFO, especially hydrogen and methane, is a breath test after ingesting lactulose, also called an aspirated air test. This sugar, lactulose, is used by bacteria in archaea to produce both hydrogen and methane. So, we ingest it, and based on the levels we have afterwards, we can extrapolate this to know how many archaea bacteria we have. Although it is not always a very accurate tool, therefore, the most important thing is to pay attention to the symptoms we have. That your doctor assesses both your health status, your symptoms, the stress you are under, the exercise you do, that is your daily habits. In my opinion, the symptoms we have should weigh more than any other test. Regarding treatment, as we have seen, Both the causes of SIBO and the way to diagnose it are complex, so the treatment will be no less. As many treatments as there are people, and this treatment always has to be personalized. In general, I will give you some guidelines, but the treatment always has to be individualized and personalized. Don't just stick with what I say is the only thing that can be done. Don't self-treat. Always go hand in hand with a professional who knows your history. But keep this information to know a little more about why they recommend certain things. Normally, the treatment for SIBO is divided into 3 phases. The first phase is the elimination of the microorganisms that are harming us. The second phase is to repopulate or restore, so to speak. And the third phase is maintenance. In this first phase, the goal is an antimicrobial action and to reduce the load of pathogens. It is usually treated with antibiotics like rifaximin or neomycin. It is important to assess very well when to use antibiotics, as many times it is like killing flies with cannon shots. It will wipe out everything, even our good bacteria. Afterwards, we may encounter worse problems like antibiotic resistance or being exposed to infections. There are other options such as the use of herbs or essential oils like oregano, which, due to their antimicrobial properties, can be a good alternative. In this phase, the use of probiotics such as Saccharomyces cerevisiae, Lactobacillus acidophilus, or Enterococcus faecium is also recommended, which can also be combined later with other probiotics like Bifidobacterium breve or Lactobacillus plantarum. The second phase of SIBO treatment is to restore or to fly. Here, probiotics will be of great help, especially Bifidobacteria, which will be responsible for recovering the integrity of the intestinal barrier. In this phase, it is also very important to improve lifestyle habits, have a good diet, manage emotions, especially stress, and exercise regularly. And a good rest. During this first and second phase, a low FODMAP diet is sometimes also recommended. It is a diet low in oligosaccharides, disaccharides, monosaccharides, and polyols, which are types of short-chain carbohydrates such as sugars, starches, and fiber. This will restrict the food for the bacteria and thus decrease their growth. Basically, it's like killing the bacteria. This diet is very, very restrictive and eliminates foods like garlic, onion, wheat, fruits, honey. That's why this diet is not recommended to be extended for a long time and is even not advisable for some types of people. In this diet, there are also phases, a first one where all these foods are completely eliminated and another where they are gradually reintroduced but not in a gradual manner. It is important to understand that this diet is used to relieve symptoms, but it is not a solution in itself. In fact, we can skip this step if we see that it may harm us more than it can help, because it can worsen our relationship with food, harm our social life, and even lead to other problems. The third phase is the maintenance phase, and as its name indicates, it is to maintain what we have achieved to regain our health. In this phase, the use of probiotics is also very important, the ones I mentioned earlier, and above all, I emphasize taking care of the 4 pillars of our microbiota. Above all, nutrition is very important, but it is not the only step. Stress management, good mental health plays a huge role. Regular physical exercise and good rest are also essential. In conclusion, I want to say that the consequences of SIBO are not only the symptoms I mentioned earlier, but the symptoms and consequences can be much more. That almost everything you eat makes you feel bad, that one day something you eat feels good and the next day it doesn't, that the causes are so numerous and so unclear, that the treatment is so long. It makes many patients feel desperate and completely hopeless. I will make this small parenthesis and this farewell in this video to tell you that you are not alone. If you are going through a moment like this, where you go to a lot of doctors, and sometimes you even wish that one of the tests you take comes back positive, even if it means something serious, just to be able to cling to something. Especially in these cases, it is a priority to take care of our mental health. Feeling physically unwell, not knowing why something is happening to you, not having a clear answer, is very exhausting. And from here, I want to send you a lot of encouragement and tell you not to give up. The process of improvement is not linear. You will have ups and downs, but you will achieve it.